Hello, my name is Blake Bear, and I am a current ICU nurse hoping to go to CRNA school. And I just wanted to show a note-taking system I've built using a program called Obsidian. Obsidian is just a software. It's a text editing software, and one of the unique things that Obsidian has is that you can link between your text files, and you can actually visualize this using this graph. And so each of these nodes, these circles here that you see, are text files with they all have titles, and then the lines you see are just links between these text files. And so I've built this myself, and basically I returned to the medical field only about 8 months ago. But I wanted to study my patients to be a better ICU nurse and prepare for CRNA school. But I kept running into a problem where all of the knowledge that I learned was siloed. So I might learn about how positive ventilation can decrease preload. And then I'd learn about something like nitroglycerin and how it also decreases preload. And all of the information was kind of siloed, and so there wasn't a good way for me to connect some of these things that are separate pieces of knowledge, but they affect the same areas of the body. And I realized I could maybe use Obsidian for this, and very specifically, I built this using a sort of software engineering framework. I did software engineering for a few years, and so I actually used that to help me construct this in a way that will be long-lived and flexible and also powerful as well. So with that said, let's dive in. Each of these different colors represent a different kind of note that I have created. So the orange ones are conditions, diagnoses. Obviously, you can see we've got like acute kidney injury, heart failure, sepsis, a pulmonary embolism, anaphylaxis. And then the red ones are medications: Levophed, epinephrine, dobutamine, labetalol, etc., etc. The purple ones are what I call pathophysiological concepts, and it's just a broad term for bad things that might be happening. And there's obviously it's important to say at this point that this is a note-taking system. It's not perfect. It's not meant to be like a published library of knowledge, so to speak. So there's some overlaps between what might be a pathophysiological concept and a condition and all of that stuff. This is just the way I've built it. This is the way it makes sense to me. So these are all purple. You get a cardiogenic shock, obstructive shock, hyperkalemia, hypokalemia, those sorts of things. I've also got physiological concepts, so like renal perfusion, right? It's just something that we care about. RAS activation, antidiuretic hormone. Obviously, I'm kind of in the renal section here. There are pharmacological concepts, which can be like the mechanism of action, the kind of medication, like a broad category of what it is. Or also, I've included things like which medications are cleared hepatically, the CYP enzymes for these medications. So a lot of flexibility and a lot of power there. And then finally, I've got what I call mechanistic concepts and cause-effect concepts. And these are really the drivers of this system. And so you can see here an increase in heart rate. So this dark green is what I call a mechanistic concept, and it's just something that happens. An increase, a decrease, something that stops, however you want to call it. And then the cause effect is what allows you to trace causality through the graph, which is really important in some of these biological or pathophysiological loops. You can actually follow these throughout the graph. So, for example, we can see here's an increase in heart rate, and it links to, a beta-1 agonist increases the heart rate. An increase in beta-1 stimulation increases the heart rate. An increase in heart rate results in an increase in left ventricular cardiac output. And so you can actually follow this through. So beta 1 stimulation, what causes an increase in beta 1 stimulation? Well, of course, a beta 1 agonist, an increase in epinephrine release, norepinephrine release. We can see that an increase in beta 1 stimulation leads to an increase in contractility. How might an increase in norepinephrine result? Well, through SNS activation. And we also see that norepinephrine also increases alpha 1 stimulation. And so it's all of these sort of loops that are actually modeled in this graph. So that is the connections between all of these nodes, which is really important. But obviously what is also important is the information inside the nodes. So if we click on sepsis here, it actually, I have it open there, but this is what the note looks like. So all of these are templates that I've built, and I just have like a quick recall, very quick, here's what's happening, refresh your mind. And then here I have these harm pathways, the interventions, the medications we might give. And each of these would link to an additional note. And on top of that, I can link my patients that I have, which I'll get into in a little bit. So this is what the sepsis might look like, and I'll just go through these quickly. Here's the BiPAP. Same thing, quick recall. What are we doing? What are the nursing considerations? One of the other really cool things I can do here is I can take the resources that I'm studying and take notes directly in these nodes. And so in the node, I can have this kind of depth of information, but I can also link to these other surrounding relevant nodes. And that actually paints a really good picture for me by giving me a ton of context. So whenever I'm learning, this is the Washington Manual of Critical Care. Whenever I'm learning about BiPAP in Washington Manual of Critical Care, I can take notes here. Oh, and here's 4 different patients that I had on BiPAP. I've had more than this, but this is, I just started this not too long ago. So, like I said, it's a work in progress. So, and then what this might look like in, here. In the graph then, as you can see, BiPAP is linked to asthma, ARDS, COPD exacerbation, acute respiratory failure, pulmonary embolism, and here you can see it's a decrease in preload. You may not be able to see this depending on your screen, decrease in left ventricular preload, and you can obviously see how this all just goes around and around. I've also got meds here, and I try to link them by approximately what they're doing, some quick pharmacological facts. And this is, again, really nice because I use Micromedics, Lexicomp, AACN, Essentials of Critical Care Nursing, all these different pharmacological resources, and the vasopressor and inotrip handbook. And so I can put all of this together in one spot. So it's worked out really, really well. With that said, then, I wanted to cover the patients here because this is really, to me, it's the most important part of medicine. And I noticed as I started this that I was seeing so many patients and there was so much information to cover and so much information available on these patients, but I would miss it. I didn't have a way to write it down, and that's okay, but I really wanted to try and capture some more of that learning. So I started to take the patients that I have, and that's each of these tan circles here. I started to take each of these patients and link them in my graph. And whenever a patient came up with something that I didn't have, then I would add the medications and I would add the conditions and everything. And then that way it's at least there. So I will say a lot of these nodes are more like placeholders right now. And as I continue to have these patients, then I revisit these concepts and study them again and again. And so it also gives me a really good format for learning rather than just continually rereading the same material. It gives me a way to sort of branch out and keep going deeper and deeper because I cover concepts that I'm already familiar with and I know when to go deeper. So with that said, I want to look at a specific patient here. I've already got him open, but I want to see. Well, you can see, how all of these things link together. And so it's really cool to see them integrated into the graph. So this specific patient, he was a STEMI post-arrest. He was in cardiogenic shock. And I just linked everything here. Of course, removed all PHI so that that's not in there. And then for some of these especially salient patients, I journal about them, I write about them. I can upload my report sheets, again, without any PHI. And so then that way I just have more context for these patients and what this specific medication, condition, whatever, you name it. Here's what it looked like clinically. And so then I also link these patients here. And again, it gives me the full clinical context, and it combines the book learning that I do with my clinical experience. And it's been very, very powerful for me in solidifying all of these concepts. Something else I do, which is really cool, so every week, this is kind of how I go about this. Every week, I fill out a weekly review template, and for each shift, I take the patients that I've had, I take things that I've studied on my off days, and then I put all of this stuff into a learning matrix with the conditions, medications, interventions, and any specific concepts. So that way it gives me a good way to figure out what I need to study, when I need to study it, etc. Depending on how things go, I can do a patient breakdown where I look at sort of like the big four there, and just look at the entire clinical picture of the patient. And then, of course, at the end, I think back on my week and think back on what happened. So my plan is to just continue using this as an ICU nurse. It's been a really valuable tool for me already, and it's getting to the point now where I can actually start using this as a clinical reference on shift, especially with medications, because it pulls together all the information that I really need to know and not all the fluff. And so it's a great reference for me, just to even jog my memory if there's something I haven't taken care of in a while. And so I plan to continue to fill this out. And then in CRNA school, I think it will be entirely reasonable to take notes on my lectures and whatever else and actually have them directly in the graph. So I can create a different kind of node and link it to any of the relevant stuff in here. And obviously it'll be an incredible study resource for me because I have all of my studying that I've done prior to CRNA school, all of the patients, or most of the patients I've taken care of prior to CRNA school, along with all of the information I am learning. And so I think it'll be a great way to leverage my clinical experience and my background prior to CRNA school while I'm actually in a very intense program. So, thank you for watching, and I appreciate your time, and I hope this was interesting.